But we're following up now with another conversation about Nadine and Paula, who have been out of school for so long. And Matt Henderson's in studio again. Good morning.
Good morning.
So your reaction to hearing this?
Yeah, when this originally aired, it was, a busy morning in my house and trying to get the kids out and all that kind of stuff, and we all just had to stop and because it's brutal. It's devastating to hear. Yeah,
you're visibly brutal. Upset by this.
Yeah, I mean these are sweet kids. These are precious kids.
They are out of schools that they say are in the Winnipeg School Division. I know when we spoke to you last month, you said anytime a child doesn't come to school, it's an emergency, is what you said. Nadine says, though, she's been out of school for more than a year, and she says the school she's waiting to return to hasn't gotten back to her. Yeah. What is your response to that?
Yeah, and this is what we're trying to right the ship here, around, and when we spoke a few weeks ago, is that I think kids have been getting the impression, not only Winnipeg School Division, but other divisions as well, where they're not welcome. They don't feel like they belong. And in this particular case, we failed these kids, and we've got to do better. And so, we've done exceptional work, I would say, in the last 6 months of not suspending kids, of when there are serious issues, bringing families together. Our principals and teachers are doing phenomenal work around this. I don't want people to get the idea that schools are kicking kids out. But what has happened with these two scholars is that they've gotten the impression that they're not welcome, and that can't stand. And so we have to do a lot better as a school division.
They're right of the age when we looked at absentee rates. They're in, if you look at their ages, 14 and 16, which we can confirm here, that would land them right around the grade 7 to 9. I'm only mentioning that because in your stats for suspensions, that sort of is a spike point. That's an issue. Yeah. So what supports could be needed at that age to better keep kids in school? Because I suspect there would be educators or those working in the middle school levels as well that are maybe grappling with fights like the one that were described by these teens, and where they go from here, and then maybe what leads to kids falling through the gaps.
Yeah, and this is of concern for us around early adolescence, and particularly early adolescence girls. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm, take your time.
Where we're seeing an increased level of violence, and the two girls, when they were talking about, sometimes somebody will look at us and we'll just start fighting, and that's what we're seeing. So our middle year schools are really thinking about what does it mean to be middle years as opposed to junior high school. We don't actually want early adolescence kids, replicating high school. We want to hold them closer, and so that means that in grade 7, grade 8, there's one teacher, and we hold them close. And there's all sorts of extracurriculars. And kids don't have to leave for lunch. They can stay on campus and be safe. And so we're having all these discussions. I was talking with a middle school principal on Friday about this because we were having a large discussion around this clip and around the experience of these girls, and this is not foreign to our principals, and they're saying, look, we're doing massive healing circles, and ceremony is at the forefront of what we're doing in school. And when you walk into our schools, you can smell sage, and for a lot of students, that means that's a safe space. And so we've had to really think about what does it mean to decolonize our schools, so that when kids come in, they can heal before they learn.
Which is relevant to the conversation because, of course, that you did hear the girls, people would have heard in that clip, talking about coming from reserve into the city as well. So, however, I will mention that also to the listeners that we played part of this. There was part of a longer interview people can listen to on the app if they like this conversation. I wonder about some specifics. Now, we're not going to divulge any detail beyond what the girls shared with us, but they did say they were in some kind of a fight with another group of girls, I believe they said, other students. And then they said those students were back in school and they weren't. So how complicated does it get, and who decides who is back in school? And and can you always mix students back together? I'm not looking for any kind of an excuse for why these kids aren't in school, but I'm wondering when you have that dynamic, what do educators do?
Well, I think what happens in these situations where it's really complex and there are big incidents, is that principals and teachers and student support really have to make sense of particular incidents. And I think now with Winnipeg School Division, we want to keep kids in their schools, but there are times where we have to say, oh, no, we have to separate these students. And we take the care now to make sure that we're moving kids to schools that make sense, where principals are involved, where family is involved. And I suspect in this particular situation that care was not necessarily there, but also that we didn't have the whole family. We didn't have the wrap around the family to sort of say, hey, this is what's happening. These are the reasons why we're separating these girls. But it is a concern to us that there is this level of violence. I mean, the thing that struck me about that conversation, there's two things that struck me about that interview, was that one child said, I've had to grow up so quickly because I just have to watch my back everywhere in Winnipeg. That this kiddo has to, they're always on alert, and they can't just be kids. And the second part is when the question was asked, what do your parents think? Do they want you in school? And they sort of said, yeah, no, my parents do want me in school. And this is what we're facing right now, where we'll do home visits, we'll call, we do family nights, we bring in language classes, and a lot of parents are just saying, not interested. We're not interested in sending our kids to school, and that's, we can only control so much, but what we can control is how do we make it so that parents actually trust the school system and want to send their kids to school. So those are the things that we're really thinking about and talking about as a system.
What's the direct follow-up when you hear that one of those teens said that her dad wondered when she was going back? And the other had said, or another part of the interview rather had said, that they were waiting for a call. Mm-hmm. How do you make sure that they haven't completely fallen through the crack? Like, who do you look to? How are you going to look into this, I guess, and figure out how to catch these girls?
Yeah, and we've already identified, sort of who the families are and how we can reach out and how we can support. Our divisional cook, Marcia, is just brilliant at working with families and saying, you got to keep going. And don't stop, and school's so important, and really wrapping families around in love, and that's what we have to do, even when there's big events, because we also will have families saying, hey, what are you going to do about these girls that did this, and we have to bring all the families together for healing.
So I know we can't identify too many details, but you said you have made some confirm some things. Mm-hmm. Can you confirm if families have already been reached out to in the case of these girls?
I don't really want to talk about a specific family on air, but what I would say is, now we're in a position in Winnipeg School Division where all hands are on deck. With all of our families.
How many students are suspended for such long periods of time? Like how common is that?
Well, nowadays not at all. Our suspension rates are almost nil. And that doesn't mean that big things aren't happening and that we have to.
But a year, like what?
And that's not possible. In fact, principals only have under the Public Schools Act can only suspend learners for 5 days, and then beyond that, it goes to the superintendent's level. And so,
can they say you're suspended for a year at the super level?
No. And the comments by here's the thing: the girls said that they were kicked out of school, and they may not have the adults may not have actually said that or done that, but this is the impression that the girls have, and that's enough for me to sort of say, wait a second, what we've communicated as adults to these girls is that you don't belong and you're not wanted, and that's the travesty.
What impact does that have on the longer term chances of success at school? The longer you're out.
Oh, it's huge. If the longer the child is out of school, the less likely for later success in life. But we don't stop there. We don't give up. And we have all sorts of teachers and principals in our school division who had difficulties during their time in public school, who are now leaders in the community. So we never give up. We never stop. I mean, I would say that there's a sickness in Winnipeg that's been brought on by, I would say, organized crime and methamphetamine and drugs. And one of our options is to give up and just to sort of say, no, we're just going to do school. But I think as Winnipeg School Division and other school systems, we're sort of the last lines in some respects of providing that essential care and keeping Winnipeg from exploding. And so that's what we'll continue to do, and we're refocused now, and we're endeavoring to be part of that healing process.
In terms of increasing how kids feel, at school in terms of safety, because they said they don't feel safe in a number of ways at school. You talked about at those middle years levels. I think you said keeping the kids close, and the resources you talked about are the one teacher for a grade level, things that would maybe keep kids closer that way. Is that happening already at middle years, or is it something you're exploring?
No, it's already happening in a lot of schools where they've moved. We have schools that have moved to advisory already, where a group of students will have that one teacher that really knows them. All the evidence shows us that when kids are known by one or two teachers really, really deeply, and where those adults are saying, I believe in you and I know you will be successful, those are schools that are rich and deep, and those are things that we want to replicate. So
can you implement that division-wide in all the schools at, say, grade 7 or 8, or is that something you're thinking about doing?
No, and we've started. Some of our schools are moving, have already moved that way. Some schools have already been doing that. But a number, especially our middle year schools, 7 to 9, are moving to that next year, and working with faculty to really kind of think about what does it mean to be middle years as opposed to junior high, where kids are going from class to class to class, may not have that deep, rich connection with kids. So, what I would say is that what we're doing isn't working. And so we need to make substantive change as a school division. And this is one way, not only in middle years, but also in high school. How do we make high school more middle years so kids have that one or two adults that they know significantly? If you and I think about our experience in middle school and in senior years, we always had that one or two teachers that we were like, man, that person knows me deeply. Could have been a coach for me in high school. It was my English teacher.
Yeah, it was my theater teacher.
Where that was the reason, that person was the reason I went to school. And so how do we ensure that every single child in every single school has that person?
Just as a last question, Superintendent, we appreciate your time and that you wanted to be here as well to respond. What needs to change to help kids who are at risk, who are not at school regularly? Because we look at, as you said, suspensions, but at some point, this is not about the system or suspensions. This is about a young person that's not at school. Like, what is the school's role there, and how do you navigate that?
I would say one thing that you said at risk. One of the things that we've done in Winnipeg School Division is we don't use that term anymore. We use the terms on track or off track. Is the child on track? For instance, to read at grade 3 level, is to do sophisticated thinking at grade 7, to graduate. Are they on track to graduate, or are they off track? And if they're off track, then me as the teacher, the adult, the onus is on us to get the child back on track. When we use at risk, that's code often for, well, this is a kid that we just can't handle. And so part of it is a bit of a cultural shift to sort of say, no, the onus is on us as adults in Winnipeg School Division to do everything in our power. Particularly me as superintendent, I have a significant education debt I owe to Indigenous children and families. Because of my privilege. And so I have to spend every ounce of energy that I possibly have ensuring that every single child feels that they're welcome and feels that they can flourish in our schools. And so I want to make sure that all of the adults in Winnipeg School Division are working towards every kid being on track.
Last quick question, and while I respect all the hard work of educators out there, if somebody suspended these kids and they came from a school, and if it's true that they haven't been seen for a year in class, if all those things line up, and I know we're not getting into all the specifics, but will somebody be held responsible within the system?
At the end of the day, I'm responsible, and I'll take that responsibility.
Thank you very much for coming in.
Okay.